today I'm sitting with Jules Maloney. She's in beautiful Sedona, Arizona, which we can't see the view today, but you do have an absolutely gorgeous view out of one of those windows there, don't you?
Yes.
I know.
Out of all of the windows, actually.
Yeah, I'm sure you do. And we were just talking about Jules's love of creativity, so much so that you even have a doctoral degree in creativity. So talk about that a bit.
Right. Well, a lot of people through my life have been really interested and wanted to know, how on earth did you get a doctorate, master's and doctorate in creativity? And I think the answer is that the University of Massachusetts in Amherst at that time, I started there in '86, at that time was in a very creative period at the School of Education. So at that time in the School of Education at UMass, you could get a doctorate in international leadership, diversity education, future studies.
Interesting.
Creativity. And my life operates as a synchronicity. So I had moved back from Boston back to the Amherst area because I also went to undergrad school in that area. And I went back there and I was working at a school, a private school with the 4-year-old group. And I just walked through the School of Ed one day and this woman's door was open and she like beckoned me and beckoned me into her office. And I sat and talked with her and she said, "I want you in this program, go take the GREs." So I did. And then it was a beautiful 5-year combined master's doctoral program in creativity that I kind of went through it with a cohort of colleagues. So, but people say, what courses did you take in creativity? And there were all kinds of things like, creative process,
Right.
creativity in the transpersonal.
Really?
Yes. Intuition and creativity, the neurophysiology at that time, which is light years ago from what we know about it now. Neurophysiology of creativity, things like that. Creativity in the young child. And when I was at the end of my master's process, my mentor asked me to start creating courses with her. I created the intuition course with her and also one called Creativity in the Young Child, because I had been working with young children for many years and I saw the genius that we come in with, because I worked with babies to 5-year-olds at a daycare center at Harvard. So I learned so much from the children. And then this is why I was wandering the halls of UMass, because I realized I better work with adults if I wanted children to be all that they truly are and to be seen and nurtured to be all that they truly are. I better work with adults, which is then what happened.
Interesting. So you mentioned you took a creativity and a transpersonal class.
Yes.
What is that?
Well, they're very connected, see, and I felt so happy when in another synchronicity, I came to AU.
Yes.
Because the transpersonal aspects of creativity were the most interesting to me. And for many years, I worked with teachers in schools of education, right? Working with early childhood and elementary teachers to teach them in the way that I wanted them to teach children. But so for me to align with and come on board at AU, where I could teach what was always most important to me, which are the transpersonal aspects. And I feel the transpersonal and creativity is kind of one and the same in a way. It's all connected with tapping into both the subconscious and unconscious realms of ourself and the human collective, and also the transpersonal realms of consciousness, higher consciousness, multidimensional consciousness, and all kinds of exciting things that we can address in these classes at AU. And, when I was in the creativity program, me and my cohort that I was with used to say we couldn't really say the difference between creativity and God. And the same with the transpersonal and God, right? God is all that is, all that is. And we can expand more and more and more and more into more and more and more of God consciousness is one way to put it. Higher consciousness, more sublime, higher vibrational consciousness and expansion.
That's so interesting.
Yes.
Through that equation, art is God.
Absolutely. And this is as Z in Z's interview the other day with you, she touched on so many of these things, that the creative process in the art or any of the arts is a process of self-actualization. Okay. And it's also a process of inner insight and transformation within, while being in the creative process. Right. Whether that's drama or art making or whatever it is. And the same goes for, the courses I teach at AU are becoming a dream worker, becoming a teacher of meditation and the inner life, and creating a meaningful life. And all three of those classes also delve into both creativity and the creative process, and obviously the transpersonal processes. So in dreams, the whole exploration of that is extremely multidimensional and multi-layered and multi-leveled, and it's very creative in the whole work of interpreting dreams and so on. The meditation is the most ancient maxim of all that Tom mentioned in his video. Also, know thyself. All of the truth is within. And so in creative processes like art making, we get to know thyself.
Yeah.
Right.
And that's what we were talking about right before we started. I was telling you that my daughter and I are both painters.
Yes.
And we've been selling art, which is wonderful.
Yes.
Part of it is I had to get out of my own way. I had to really face my own ego.
Yes.
And I think that happens a lot in creativity, and realize this human person isn't creating the art. It's my divine spirit that was creating it. And somehow I was blocking it. I wasn't letting her through.
Right. Well, that's where everybody hits that wall of the ego. Or could say the false self. The false self is only what we've been conditioned and trained to be. So it's not really what we are. It's a teensy but little fraction, and it does get in our way. But we learn these things as we continue our journey to our true nature and the truth of who we are, and receiving these insights. And we receive insights all the time. And it's being open to those and making space for those and so on.
Yeah. So we were, we talk about our, the human self, and Z touched on a bit of it. The children, you ask them to create something artistic, draw a bird, and they just draw you what they think a bird is. There's no ego in the way. There's no human self. And that's really hard to keep all the way through that adolescence into adulthood. So how do you teach removing that ego?
Well, for one thing, some of the work that I do as a healer, I'm also a healer for 17 years in Sedona. I'm a Reiki master, and I have done lots of different kinds of healing work, emotional release, inner journeys, access consciousness work. And that's work that is recognizing and deleting old subconscious programs that we have been programmed with from our education, from our upbringing, from the culture, everything that we could put under the category of outer appearances. And so I created a whole class about this, because about 5 years ago or so, I started to experience that everything that was coming out of people's mouths was just their subconscious beliefs that were lies, basically. And so I created this whole class about it, and also did it as a healing session. But I use that work in the Creating a Meaningful Life class. Why? Because we need to recognize what is not us, what we've just acquired from the culture and our upbringing, which keeps us limited. Because the three most common beliefs in humanity is something is wrong with me, something's wrong with him or her, something is wrong with the world. And there's thousands of iterations on this. Some of them are, I'm not good enough, I will never measure up, etc., etc., etc. But they're deeply lodged in our subconscious and have been for hundreds, thousands of years, that we get them through the genetic lines even, right? They're lodged in there. And so we want to face those. And one of the ways we do that is by facing our greatest fears and noticing what our greatest fears are and how those are actually subconscious beliefs and programs that are limiting our free expression. And the thing is to free ourselves up. And creativity as a whole realm ultimately has the process of freeing us up.
I love that idea of deleting generational programming.
Yeah.
That's deep.
Yes, it is deep. It is deep. And so I bring my own work now to my students as well. And, I have a channeled book, Mary Magdalene, the Christos-Sophia Revelation. And I bring these teachings into the courses because they're applicable. Okay. So for one thing, one of the standouts that was channeled through me from the Magdalene was, you are love in a human form. You are love, loving all that is. You are truth being revealed. So these thoughts and others like them come in handy in our transpersonal explorations in all of the courses at AU. And there was one thing I wanted to talk about on the video today, which is something that I've observed over the years. So I realize this is my 8th year.
Yes.
I'm coming to the end of my 8th year with AU. And what I started noticing a few years ago was that people would go through enormous transformation, inner revelation, healing, letting go of the old false self, and expanding into their true nature, their expanded transpersonal awareness and self. And enormous transformation goes on each semester for the individuals, but also the groups are very sacred. The groups that come together in the classes in AU, in my experience, create an incredible synergy of affecting each other. And so then I noticed that the next semester, the next class seemed to begin in consciousness where the last one left off. And then 12 weeks later, the next class seemed to begin in consciousness awareness where the last one left off. And this taps into my own understanding of oneness, right? There's only one of us here, is one way of saying that. In 8 billion diverse bodies, in 8 billion spiritual paths on this planet, as I always say, there's 8 billion spiritual paths on this planet, but only one of us. That's the collective humanity and the collective consciousness, which is at both a subconscious level and a transpersonal level. But what I was seeing was we do make an impact. As we expand our consciousness, each individual, it does affect the whole consciousness of humanity. This is why I would see the new students starting at the place.
Interesting.
Yes, because all of the work that had been done by the individual consciousnesses, just in my own little world of the AU classes, right? I could see, so what we do, become, have the courage to express, etc., is part of the healing of humanity as a whole, and the freeing up of humanity as a whole, and and the insights into greater truths within for the whole. It's beautiful to have it be conscious like it is in the classes, because that's what happens in a class. These inner ahas become conscious and they're shared. And yes, and thus they become more anchored within us as well. And this includes even the reading materials and the videos and everything else in the classes, as well as the interaction between everyone in the class, including myself.
Aren't those aha moments so amazing and cosmic?
Yes, they are.
And you see someone and they're, because usually right before an aha moment, there's a bit of a struggle.
Yes.
This trying to shed the skin, so to speak, and shed that programming. And all of a sudden they go, oh, I get this. I'm supposed to shed my false self.
Yes.
And you go, yeah, that's a pretty good thing to do.
Yes.
I love those aha moments.
So do I. So do I. And that's, very woven into the whole discipline of creativity, if you want to call it a discipline. The aha,
and that's the takeaway. That's where you're changed forever.
Exactly.
It's not reading the article so much. I've always thought that for me, the biggest changes are the tiniest things.
Yes.
Not that big traumas don't change me. They do, but I am changed on a soul level by little tiny moments.
Yes.
And that's the most profound to me, because I feel like if I can continue making small progress, the change sticks. It stays with me.
That's so true. That's so true. Yes.
I like this, and it's for me. Maybe some people are better with big instances, but I think I've learned my lesson that I've been bonked on the head by the spirit long enough that I'm like, okay, small change.
Yeah, right.
Don't make the small change.
The big changes that come like a flash of lightning and so on and are really huge can have interesting repercussions, as in that we learn about in the spiritual crisis course, the spiritual emergency
that's
experience. And then you have to process a lot of shadow material when something like that happens.
We were just talking about that today. Shadow. Everyone has a shadow and nobody's exempt from that.
No, because we've lived it all. Right.
We've lived it all.
We've lived it all. And one of the things that the Magdalene said about that too is that the reason you all have experienced the darkest to the lightest within and around yourself is because then it gives you the compassion to meet anyone where they are at. So it gets you out of judgment, right? When you can see your own shadow materials, it gets you out of judgment of yourself and of others, so that it brings you into a state of compassion where you can meet people where they are, because you know from within yourself, both your shadow and your light.
You have to have that shadow. You can't, what is it? You can't understand light without shadow.
Yes, right.
Good without bad. We have to, that's our task here, is to live it all.
Well, that's why we're in a 3D existence, to learn that very thing, because in the 3D is the only place where there is this duality consciousness of good and bad, light and dark, and all of that. And it's for a very good reason, because it creates a friction that leads us into a much greater individual and collective sovereignty and freedom. And freedom is the keynote for this next age that we've entered into, the Aquarian age. The keynote for this next 2,300 years or so is freedom. Whereas the keynote for the Piscean age that we're just leaving, it was love. And so in that age, we learned the whole spectrum of love, from self-love to self-hatred, from love of others to hatred of others. We learned in this 2,300-year period, as a soul who continues to incarnate, all of the intricacies of love.
And hopefully when we come back, or I come back, I only can speak for myself, I have with me what I've learned here. And I remember in the next one
Yes,
We
yes,
start, like you said, I start off at the consciousness that I left, you know.
yes, exactly, exactly.
Certainly hope that is.
That's true. That's
So I
true.
know you have a book sitting next to you,
Yes,
and I
yes,
wanted, we talked about you defining for us what is creativity, because I want to know Jules's perspective on creativity.
yes. This is so. These words that I'm going to read go back to my dissertation, actually, and so they take us back like 30 years ago to where my consciousness was then. But they're now also in this book. I have Every Child is Holy. And this section is called Omnipresent Creativity. To be human is to be creative. This is what humans are. We learn, grow, and change every minute. We are hardwired for self-confidence, boldness, openness, flexibility, curiosity, wonder, joy, and the desire to stretch, take risks, and explore the unknown. Humans are intrinsically motivated to explore, discover, translate, make, express, and communicate. Let's see. Creativity is natural, a force or a power which channels itself through the interests and passions of the individual. Creativity shows itself through enthusiasm and passion, risk-taking and absorption in whatever it is you're engaged with, novelty and adventure, complexity and curiosity, wonder and joy. Creativity involves a variety of conditions: freedom to explore, question, and reflect, uninterrupted time, choices, relaxation, self-confidence, and honesty. There is a synergistic relationship between creativity and engaging in creativity, self-esteem, and the freedom to be oneself authentically. So engaging in anything creatively, whether it's a product, an act, or a mental creation of creativity, or meditation, frees us up to be our authentic self as well. And in all of this enhances our self-esteem.
Yes.
Yes.
And that's what I hear when you say that, is it's, as you're saying that, I picture these layers coming off a person.
Yes.
Because they have to, it's self-discovery, and you have to get rid of the judgment of self, the judgment of others, feeling like an imposter, growing self-esteem, growing that self-love. And that's what it sounds like.
Exactly. The self-love and self-honoring.
Self-honoring.
Yes.
Z said something like, art is the work of the shaman, or the shaman is
Yes.
the artist of the village.
Shamanistic work, yes.
And I think
that's delving deep.
Yeah.
Into alternate realities within ourselves.
Right, but you've got to shed this self-judgment, judgment of others, to get that far. You know,
well, judgment is the primary orientation of humanity. It has been. It has been. We're educated that way, and we grow up that way, to make distinctions with everything, to be critical. This is good, this is bad.
Yes.
I'm better, I'm less than, you know, etc. All of these things are all the lies we have been told.
Probably started primally too. Good cat that will kill me.
Yes.
You know, and we just kept that. So what do you hope your students at Atlantic University take away from your classes?
Pure empowerment. Empowerment in all that they know, in all that is being revealed to them, in all their sovereignty, and as teachers going out, because a lot of the people that I work with in the classes are already and are intending to be spiritual teachers, spiritual mentors, healers,
Yeah.
etc. And so, yeah, to take all that they are and give it away.
Because there's always more.
There's always more.
You can always get more. And I think that's what people miss is love is unending.
Yeah, there's always more.
We just have these, we think it's not. Creativity is unending. So
Yes,
I love that. Keep giving.
creativity is who we are.
Yeah. And we're love. So
We are love, we are creativity.
So thank you so much, Jules. This has been so fun.
Yeah, thank you, Rachel.
You're welcome.
We had no idea what would happen, but
Well, I told you at the beginning, I was like, let's see where we go.
yeah, exactly.
All right. Thank you, Jules.
Thanks.
Bye.